my way. So fabulous. Happy Sunday. Happy 4th of July. Happy Canada Day for any, no, just me? Okay, good. And happy, gorgeous, gorgeous day. It's so stunning out, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be speaking to you today in the, hit my mic, in the power and the presence, as the power and the presence that we all are. The thing itself, as Ernest Holmes says, as it expresses through and as each and every one of us, everything that has ever been created has been created as God, because God wants to experience more of itself as whatever it created. Each of us are exactly as we're supposed to be, period. End of sermon, let's go to brunch, go to the beach. That's it. I'm complete. Yes. So I've got another 15 minutes to go, so I'll fill it up with a poem. This poem is by Rainier Rilke, one of my favorite writers from the 1920s. Now I just need my glasses. Okay, there we go. Want the change. Be inspired by the flame where everything shines as it disappears. What locks itself in sameness is congealed. Is it safer to be gray and numb? What turns hard becomes rigid and is easily shattered. Pour yourself like a fountain. Flow into the knowledge that what you are seeking finishes often at the start, and with ending begins again. What you are seeking finishes often at the start, and then with the ending begins again. Every happiness is the child of a separation that did not think it could survive. Every happiness is a child, I'm saying it twice because it's really important. Every happiness is a child of a separation it did not think it could survive. Every new beginning has an ending. When we are starting something in our lives, something has ended. When you're starting something new in our lives. And a lot of times, our new beginnings are someone else's endings. Everything is just a continuous cycle of beginning, flourishing, and then ending. We see it in the gardens, we see it in nature. It's the same for our lives. A continuous cycle of creation, of birth, flourish, and diminishment. That's a piece. Ernest Holmes says one of the greatest discoveries ever made is that mankind has ever made is that his thought is a creative power. It's not just a random thing that's going on. It actually has the ability to create, and we know that because nothing is created in the world without first a sort of divine inspiration, and then a thought that comes from that divine inspiration, and then an outpicturing of that in our lives, whether it's a piece of theater, a cake, a flower arrangement, anything. This center is the result of someone having an inspirational moment and a thought, and followed through in the thought. The thought itself doesn't do the thing, we do the work that follows. We have to make choices and take action. So the greatest discovery that man has ever made was that thought has creative power. That is, that it uses creative power. His thought of itself would have no power unless it were operative through the creative medium. We do not have to compel the law to operate. It's like the law of gravity. We don't have to tell the law of gravity to do its thing. The law of thought and creative process has its way. How we want to work with that, that's up to us. How we want to engage with the law of creativity is up to us. I think of it oftentimes as superheroes. They all have these powers, but they get to decide if they use the powers for good or the powers for evil. Every myth that we've ever read, from Harry Potter to some of the ancient myths to all the superheroes to many of the fairy tales, they all have a conflict or a piece of the story that is using powers for good, or making choices for a good life, or making choices for what is called a bad life, or using your powers for evil or bad. The other piece that Ernest Holmes says that I think is key to everything that we are trying to live through these teachings. And when I was going through my practitioner training and some of my ministerial training, this part didn't really sink in. But the more I'm out in the world and doing my thing, living my calling, being sort of more fully expressed in the world, the more I try to come back to this truth. The divine plan is one of freedom. The divine plan is one of freedom. The inherent nature of mankind is ever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom, because freedom is the birthright of every soul. We are born as freedom. We are born that way. And then the limits come. And then the constriction comes. And then the ideas of separation come. One of our other sayings is there's one life, and that life is God's life, and that life is being lived through and as my life right now. That's the same thing. God's life is abundant. God's life, God's very expression, is freedom and love and abundance, however that shows up in our lives. Now, freedom, it becomes, I think, freedom is a construct that is sort of a result of a lack of freedom. We're born as freedom, and then we forget that we're actually free because we're told to be a boy, to be a good boy, to be a bad girl, whatever the thing is. We're labeled and constricted, and a sort of home is created around us based on thoughts. As Hafiz, the Persian poet, says, the words you speak today become the house you live in. The words that we're told as children become the house we exist in. We move out into the world. The words and the ideas that have been imposed upon us we take them on as our identity. And it's not the truth. And many times, those ideas are actually lies based on someone else's perception. Because people don't know who we are, and they already judge or create an idea of who we are, and they project that onto us. And then we take it on as like it's our truth. It's not our truth. It's someone else's truth being projected on us that we internalize and then create a story around someone else's idea of us, and then eventually it becomes what drives our life. So when thinking about this talk today, I have to come up with a title. To put it in the email, I send it to Nick, and it's got to be marketable. And so the title of today's talk is Free Your Mind and the Rest Will Follow. And the other choice I had was everything I needed to know about freedom I learned from baby elephants. Now the first one I picked has a better theme song from the 90s, if anyone's a non-Vogue fan. I'm not going to sing it. Okay. Free your mind and the rest will follow. That's all I'll sing. The other title was a little harder to put to music, and I couldn't find a song that went with it. So I went with Free Your Mind and the Rest Will Follow. Part of the inspiration for that, and the second title, was the idea that I was thinking of how they train elephants in the circus. And they train elephants in all captivity, if they're trying to rein them in. They train them by putting a rope around their neck as baby elephants and tying that rope to a giant pole. So the baby elephant obviously wants to walk away and twists and turns and tries to get away, but knows that it's tethered to the pole. And it knows that it can't pull it away. It's just a baby elephant. It doesn't have the strength. So eventually the baby elephant just decides, okay, I'm okay where I am. I'm not going to struggle. I'm not going to pull. It's futile. The next time they put the rope around the elephant's neck, it still tries to get away. It pulls and twists and turns and tries to leave, but then it's pulled back. It realizes that it's useless to try to get away. And eventually, pulling on the rope doesn't do anything. They realize that it's futile to work against the tethering. Let's go for that. The same thing happens over and over and over and over again, so that by the time the elephant becomes the giant elephant, it has no thought in its mind that it can actually pull this tent down. What ends up happening, I don't know if you've ever seen it, sometimes you'll see the elephant with a big rope around its neck, and the rope is just dangling on the ground. It's not even attached to anything. And the elephant believes itself to be powerless against the rope. The very idea of the rope that has been placed over the elephant's neck keeps it in its place. And sometimes you see the rope attached to a little stake that's this big, stuck into the ground. The elephant doesn't know that it has the power to pull the tent down. The elephant doesn't know that it has the ability to change the whole trajectory of its life. The other thing that I saw a couple weeks ago was a video of a donkey. Now, donkeys aren't as powerful as an elephant, but this one donkey had a rope around his neck, and it was tied to a small molded white lawn chair. You've seen those patio chairs, the flimsy ones for $10 at Walmart or wherever. And the donkey this donkey was a video, and it looked at the chair, and then it walked away like this, came back, walked away, kept moving, but it was tied to this. It didn't know that it could drag that chair with it or kick it and break it and go on its way. There's an atmosphere of thought in the elephant and in the donkey that is a similar pattern of thought, an atmosphere of thought that some of us, most of us, at some point in our lives have alive and well within us. When we forget the truth, when we forget that we are one with God, we are a creation of that, and we have the power of choice, and that our actual divine plan for our lives is one of freedom and self-expression and fullness and abundance. This idea has been placed in their head. It's not their own. It didn't originate from them. Someone put a yoke around their neck and trained them to stand where someone else wanted them to stand. Now, this constriction comes in our lives when someone else has told us something about ourselves. We believe the lie that was told to us over and over and over and over again. Then it becomes our truth. And really it becomes our truth with a small t, not a capital T. The capital T is God's truth for us, is the divine plan for us. And that plan is that we are one with God. And that plan is that I am that which thou art, and there is nothing that can divide me from that except my own thinking. God expresses itself in its own way through us. Each of us are here to express the divine as our own unique, creative, fantastic, authentic way. Any truth that we've been told contrary to that is a lie. Not intentional lie sometimes, but just an untruth for us. And we don't need to have anyone's permission to be who we are. We don't need anyone's permission to do anything other than live our life authentically. You were not born into this life to live someone else's version of it. You were born into this life and into this incarnation, into this body, into this vibration, to live the life that you were born to live, period. Period. We are the individuals among the many birthed from the one. We are God's vision, we are God itself, expressed individually as us, particularized, as I said last time I was here, as us. Each of us, as Ernest Holmes says, is the thing itself, manifested as the individual, as this personality. Our ability to be has gotten lost in the glorification of our doing. The doing becomes more important than who we are. Our job becomes more important than who we are. Our place that we live becomes more important. The city that we live becomes more important than actually living authentically sometimes. And sometimes we need to move. Sometimes we need to leave the podium. Sometimes we need to pull down the tent, lift up that stake, and move on. Our ability to do what we have personally come here to do, in this lifetime to do, has gotten lost in the fact that we're so busy doing and being what other people expect us to be and do. I'm reminded of a motivational talk I went to once, and the speaker said, Tony Gaskins was his name, if you don't build your own dreams, someone's going to hire you to build theirs. Truly, I've done it. I'm building someone else's dream. and I'm in the process of building my own dream as well. There's nothing wrong with working for other people and all of that, as long as it is part of your fullest expression of who you are. The challenge comes when doing that gets in the way of what you're supposed to be doing in your life. When I took my vows of ministry and as a practitioner, and I'm reminded of it because I had to say them again in front of a graduating class again in June, my vows were to pray the prayers that are mine to pray, to speak the words that are mine to speak, and to do the work that is my work to do. I don't need to do someone else's work that they think I should be doing. I have my own journey. I have my own path, and we all have that. We have responsibilities and we have things we have to take care of, absolutely. No one's saying to shirk your responsibilities. But there's a way to do the work, and there's a way to raise children, there's a way to be in a family, there's a way to be in a relationship that respects both people's paths, all people's paths. And that really, when we go back to the divine plan as one of freedom, everyone just wants to express themselves. Everyone just wants to do good in the world. Everyone. I'm just going to switch. Yes, there we go. The constriction and the challenge comes for us when we spend our lives or spend moments looking outside of ourselves for the validation, when we look outside of ourselves for permission to do what it is, to be what it is that we are. And that creates the constriction, it creates contraction, it creates a tight, sort of like a tight bud. It only has so much life, so much flowering in it. And if you've been seeking more freedom in your life, then you are actually required to be freedom itself. You're here to deliver that which you are seeking. If you've been seeking more compassion and kindness, then you need to bring more compassion and kindness to the world. Another speaker I saw, she said, and one of the teachings that I've been sort of hanging on to and wrestling with this past couple years is, what I'm seeking, I'm actually here to deliver. You know, what you are seeking, you're actually here to bring to the world. If you want more creativity, if you want more love, if you want more adventure, then you have to be adventurous. You have to be more loving. You have to be more creative. It's not going to come to you. It's not going to come to you if you're tight and held, and I'm not going to leave this podium, I'm not going to leave this town, I'm not going to leave this, whatever the situation is. You're not going to get more. You're going to get more of what you've just got. Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. He wasn't kidding. That's not a joke. It's funny. It's not a pithy saying to post on Facebook or put on the side of a mug, although I posted it on Facebook and I do have a mug that says it. That's just a reminder. The truth is, you actually have to be the thing you wish to experience in the world. Whatever that is. You have to pull up the stake. You have to know that you're freedom. You have to know that you have the power to walk away. You have to know that you have the power to stand strong. You have to know that you have everything it takes to be and accomplish what you need in this life. The tree frog doesn't doubt its tree frogness. The dog doesn't question its puppy or its dogness. The cat, although some cats think they're a dog, but they really are a cat. They don't question that. The tulip doesn't question it's a tulip. The maple tree doesn't, not that there's a maple tree out there, but I just pointed over there. It does not question that it's a maple tree. It doesn't try to be an oak tree. It doesn't try to be anything other than what it is. Human beings, as far as I can tell, are the only ones that doubt who they are. They are the only ones that create a story and a life other than what's most authentic to them. We have the choice. We have the power to choose to live more authentically. Again, one of our core teachings that there is one life, and that life is God's life, and that life is my life. And there is no limitation within the context of God's expression of itself. There's no limitation within God's expression of itself. I often think of a story I heard at one Baptist church once. The preacher was doing his thing, and it was amazing. But he said, don't go to God and tell it how big your mountain is, your problem is. Go to the mountain and tell it how big your God is. Don't go to the obstruction in your life and don't go to God and tell it about the big obstruction in your life. Don't go to God and tell it that I can't make this change because it's this and this and this. That's the human story. Go to the situation and tell it how big your faith is. If you don't like the word God, use faith. If you don't like the word faith, use the word love. If you don't like love, just go to whatever it is and know yourself as one with God. There's a challenge in front of you. Know that challenge is an illusion. It's a construct that someone else has created and you're participating in it, and you can approach it differently. You can approach it from the place of a supreme plan in your life, from the perspective of a higher consciousness. That's what we do when we go into meditation and do a chant and sing like we did today. What we're really doing, we're slowing the world, we're slowing the effects of the world, we're slowing the ideas and context and the rushing and the traffic and all of those things so that we can go deeper into our mind, deeper into our body, deeper into our authentic oneness with God, and we open ourselves up at the top. We open ourselves up to a concept of freedom that we don't even label freedom, because it's just this idea of open at the top, one with God. There is no separation. We say it in the song over and over and over again. There's no separation between me and my God. There's no separation between you and yourself. There's no separation between you, the human self, and the very truth that is beyond the human self. And when we know that, then we have to ask ourselves, are we actually willing to be love? Are we actually willing to do the work that it takes to experience freedom? Are we actually willing to take the responsibility for our lives? Are we actually willing to love as fully as we want to, as we say we want to? Are we willing to let go of any small ideas that are holding you back? Are you willing? Do you actually want it? Some of us say we want adventure, but then we want to stay home. Bring the adventure to me, bring love to me, but then we don't go on a date. I did that for years. Not anymore. Are you willing to let go of an old, outdated way of being? Are you willing to let go of someone else's idea of who you should be? I remember when, about 6 years ago, I went through a deconstruction of my life. I divorced and I sold things and moved out of the big apartment and moved into a smaller apartment. And then a little while later, my mother died. So everything in my life that I had defined my life by had changed. And in one of my meditations, in one of my journalings, a question came to me. And the question was, who would you be if everything you ever believed to be true about yourself was no longer true? Who are you going to be now if all those ideas and all those external definers that I've used to define who I am, I'm a good husband, I'm a good son, I have a fancy apartment, I have X, Y, and Z, those became my identity. Get rid of all those, now who are you going to be? Who are you left with? And that's a deep question. We're not going to solve that today. But it's a profound question. Can I sit in silence and be okay? Can I sit or stand or live alone and be okay because I know who I am, because I've accepted the truth of my oneness and my own divine plan for my life? That is a profound question. And it leads to really great places, in my mind anyhow. Now, the other thing, too, in last year when I was here speaking about freedom, I had my papers, and I had my book, and I had whatever I had, and just like the elephant and the donkey, I wouldn't leave the podium. I was stuck. I was grounded here. I had my papers, and I was like, this is what I'm going to read. This is my talk. I'm going to But now, at some point, we have to decide to let go of the podium. At some point, we have to let go of the idea and live our lives. Sometimes we're going to fall, we're going to stumble, we're going to forget what we're going to say, but sometimes we're going to be inspired and the adventure takes off. And sometimes the magic happens. The magic is not going to happen if we stick to the script of our lives. The magic is not going to happen if we stick to someone else's plan for ourselves, or even our own plan. Sometimes you have to throw out the rule book and get on with it. Sometimes we have to stop asking permission and give notice for our lives. Give notice to the universe, give notice to whoever it is we need to give notice to ourselves, and stop asking for outside permission. Give ourselves permission to pull up stakes. Give ourselves permission to live the freedom, to be that which we know we are to be. I just did a wedding a couple weeks ago. I officiated a wedding for a couple, and one of the things I always say in these weddings, near the end, is, bless you, love is present where love is declared. And then I say to the bride, love today is meeting itself. It's beautiful, right? Kind of poetic. I like that. I wrote that. But freedom is present where freedom is declared. Where you declare yourself in the world is where you'll be. Who you declare yourself to be is who you're going to be. If you don't declare it and own it and stand in it, you're never going to find your direction in a way that is lasting and authentic and an adventure and magical. That's where the possibility lies. That's where the adventure lies. That's where everything is wide open for you. So, stop asking for permission to love. Stop asking for permission to be loved, to be creative. Make the change you want to make. And actually be that which you're seeking in the world. You're here to bring it, not buy it. You're here to bring it, not purchase it. You're here to bring it, not get it. You're here to deliver it and to offer it and to live it fully. You're here to be that which you are and to be and to live the supreme plan and the birth that is your birthright. It's time to stop asking for permission. Free your mind and the rest will follow. You got it. Make one choice at a time. You can't paint the whole painting all at once. You take one brushstroke at a time. You can't write the whole book all at once. You write one word at a time, one sentence at a time, and one page at a time. Same with your life. You can't live every day all at a time. You can only live the day you're in. I know it sounds simple, but that shit ain't easy. Sorry. Pardon my language. But sometimes that's what it is. So I'm going to finish off with one of my other favorite quotes, an Ananias Nin quote. And the day came when the risk it took to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And the day came when the risk and pain it takes to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So take the risk. It's worth it. Amen. Hallelujah. So it is. Thank you. I ain't done yet. I'm going to sing a song. Here's my thing. And we don't know what's going to happen because we haven't rehearsed anything or anything, but just let me go and you'll find a key and whatever. Again, we're going to step away from the podium, step out, away from the script, and just go for it and see what creativity happens. This song is called Up to the Mountain. It's inspired by Martin Luther King's last speech, Up to the Mountain. And the point of the metaphor, Up to the Mountain, is exactly what I spoke about earlier, raising ourselves up in consciousness. so that we can see and survey the land and see the way more clearly. So enjoy. We'll see. I went up to the mountain because you asked me to, up over the clouds to where the sky was blue. I could see all around me, everywhere. I could see all around me, everywhere. Sometimes I feel like I ain't never been nothing but tired, and I'll be walking till the day I expire. Sometimes I lay down. No more can I do. But then I go on again because you asked me to. Some days I look down and I'm afraid I will fall. And though the sun shines, I see nothing at all. And I hear your voice, oh, come and then go. Telling me softly, you love me so. That peaceful valley that I know lies within, that peaceful valley that I've come to know. It may not stay there forever in this lifetime, but sooner or later, it's there, it's here, I'll always go. What do I do? Thank you.